All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please note those in attendance?
All will be noted.
Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We'll jump into item 2A, minutes of the regular city council meeting on August 27, 2024. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Do I have a second? Motion is second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 3, adoption of the agenda. Are there any corrections or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have an agenda. Item 4, consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. All right. Item 5A, Constitution Week proclamation. I look forward to doing this every year. I think it's an important thing that we acknowledge, the Constitution and the anniversary of its adoption. So without further ado, I will read that proclamation now. Whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government in a republic dedicated to the rule of law. Whereas September 17, 2024 marks the 237th anniversary of the framing of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. Whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document and its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebration which will commemorate the occasion. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Dan Lewismet, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of White Bear Lake, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17 through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution that they had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through this guardian of our liberties. All right. So over the next week, go out and celebrate the Constitution. Okay. Item 5B, the Century Avenue Reconstruction Project Update. Mr. Copy.
Mayor, members of the council, tonight we have representatives from Washington County and their consultant will present on the Century Avenue Highway 120 project, basically from Interstate 694 up to County Road E, and just kind of they'll be presenting on where we've been through some public engagement, some preliminary design, and then some of the next steps, council approvals on certain things regarding the design options, and then kind of go through a schedule as far as funding goes and timeline for construction. So I'll introduce Erin Clarkowski. She is the project manager from Washington County. I should note that this is a joint Ramsey County, Washington County project. Washington County is the lead agency on it. And Erin will present, and at the end, we'll have time for questions.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. As mentioned, I'm Erin Clarkowski. I'm a civil engineer with Washington County. I have with me tonight Maddie Dahlheimer, who is also a planner with Washington County, Tim Lampkin, who is a civil engineer with Bolton and Mink, and Kelsey Larson, who is a traffic engineer with Bolton and Mink. So our project team is here tonight to present an update for the State Highway 120 Century Avenue North Reconstruction Project. As you are likely aware, State Highway 120 Century Avenue North between 694 and County Road E, County Highway 12 and Wildwood Road in White Bear Lake and Matamidi, which is shown in orange on the left side of the screen, is in the process of being transferred jurisdictionally from state ownership to county ownership. Because Century Avenue is a border road between Ramsey and Washington County, each county will receive their respective half of the road. As of this summer, the counties in the state have come to an agreement on the transfer terms and have an executed agreement. We are anticipating the date of release, which is essentially when the road gets transferred from the state to the counties, and the county highway number to be determined in the spring of 2025. So this construction project came about because along with this formal jurisdictional transfer process, the agencies involved are aware that there are many opportunities for improvement along this stretch of Century Avenue, so funding for construction was solicited and successfully acquired. Washington County is leading the design effort for the upcoming project along Century Avenue. At this time, we're excited to report that Washington County has $7 million in federal funding acquired and a potential $2 million earmarked from federal congressionally directed funding. The counties will also receive $10.5 million from the state as a part of the transfer process for this 1 mile stretch of Century Avenue. With the funding in hand, we've gathered a group of necessary agency staff that inform the project by representing their communities. Some project considerations that this group is committed to improving along this stretch of Century Avenue include safety, multimodal, balance, and improving existing conditions. Over the past year or so, we've been meeting regularly with our agency partners and facilitating meetings with different stakeholders in the area to identify the issues and opportunities which inform the project scope. Agencies that participate in our monthly project management team meetings are representatives from both counties, both cities, and MnDOT. The other stakeholders we've engaged have been Metro Transit, Century College, FedEx, and the public. Washington County's approach for engaging the public on our large transportation projects includes 3 phases. First, an initial listening session, a second round of sharing options, and lastly, presenting a single option recommendation to move forward. I'm excited to report that over the last year, in terms of engagement meetings, we've had 9 project management team meetings with our agency partners, 2 public open house events, 2 meetings with FedEx leadership, 2 meetings with Century College leadership, and 2 pop-up style events with Century College staff, faculty, and students. We will focus our material today on the content shared in the second round of engagement, which includes some of the major corridor improvements which are responding to the initial feedback received from our project stakeholders at our first public open house. Because of our limited time tonight, we'll walk through some excerpts from our design alternatives that focus on major components of improvements to the corridor. This doesn't mean that other areas along 120 in this stretch will not be improved as a part of the project. We're planning for end-to-end pavement reconstruction, additional pedestrian facilities, and additional infrastructure to serve transit service along the corridor throughout the entire project area. So starting at the north end of the corridor, at the intersection of Century Avenue and County Road E, County Highway 12, and Wildwood Road, which is by CVS, Caribou, Marathon. Just for these slides, it's of note that there is a little keynote legend somewhere on the slides. You can see in the green circle where we're at. That helps with wayfinding. The project alternatives that were presented to the public and project stakeholders respond to feedback received on intersection safety and pedestrian accommodations. We presented both a roundabout intersection control change and a traffic signal that would be similar to what's out there today, but we'd look into the signal timing to optimize signal phasing. You'll notice that both options show enhanced pedestrian facilities, which would tie into the existing pedestrian network that exists today. As we transition further south on the corridor, again, we're kind of jumping around, so now we are at the southernmost Century College access, which is adjacent to the residential area of the corridor on both the Wiper Lake and Matamidi side. You'll see that we're proposing either a new roundabout or a traffic signal at this intersection, which would replace the existing side street stop control. This intersection was the hottest topic for intersection control opportunities that we heard with our first round of public engagement. We're excited for the opportunities that a traffic signal or roundabout could provide to the unique intersection needs resulting from Century College's traffic patterns. Both alternatives would also improve pedestrian connectivity. Before we get into this slide, I'd just like to note that the orientation of these views has now shifted. So now north is to the right. And you can see, same with the keynote, now we're just showing the legend as right to the north as well. Generally speaking, along the project corridor, the roadway capacity between intersections is proposed to actually be similar to the existing condition with our project, except for in the residential area of the corridor between Long Lake Road and County Road D and the Southern Century College intersection we were just at. Responding to feedback we heard in our first round of engagement about speeding and traffic capacity, the project team is evaluating 2 alternatives adjacent to the residential area, either a 4-lane divided roadway or a 3-lane section with a center left turn lane. Both concepts show new pedestrian facilities on either sides of the road, which we heard are especially important for Century College students walking from the bus stop to school at Long Lake Road. As the project team weighs these options for the roadway section, we're thinking about private property impacts, maintenance, costs, and future development, specifically on the Mahtomedi side in this area. Moving south, our design concept keeps a traffic signal at County Road D and Long Lake Road, with the primary improvement differences from the existing condition being additional storage capacity for FedEx trucks leaving in the morning on the east leg, in response to the public feedback about splitting the eastbound through, let's see if I can point at it here. I don't know, it doesn't show up on the TV, I apologize. On the west side, response to the public feedback about splitting the eastbound through and eastbound right turn movements on the west leg adjacent to Speedway there to reduce delay. So what did we hear from the public and our project stakeholders on these details? We received unanimous feedback on support for the multimodal improvements. Responders were interested in the proposed balance of traffic capacity, flow, and safety. Flow and improved access. We've heard consistent feedback on improved intersection safety. Transit accommodations continue to be a hot topic along this corridor, and as mentioned, we're working closely with Metro Transit to consider the rider experience for local bus users. Lastly, when presenting these concepts, we did receive questions regarding property acquisitions and construction logistics, which we will, of course, address after we establish a preferred alternative concept. Our team is still evaluating the alternatives based on project stakeholder input, so if the council has additional feedback either to share tonight or via our online engagement tools, there is a QR code on this slide and then a website link on all of our slides tonight. We certainly welcome your feedback. So where are we at with the design process? With our project stakeholder feedback in hand, our next step for the project is to identify a preferred alternative concept. We will present this preferred alternative recommendation to the public and come back to council for municipal consent. We'll then move into final design and property acquisitions as needed in 2025 and 2026, and we're currently planning for 2027 construction to meet our funding requirements. With that, our project team will now take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Krakowski. I don't have any questions before I throw it to the council. I just have one comment. I like roundabouts, so to the extent we can work those in, I think those are effective. And I guess I do have a question. Do you find that those are safer? And then part two is County Road E, that corridor, that's a pretty busy intersection. Is a roundabout something that's going to bottleneck, or can that accommodate that? And I'm see you looking at colleagues, so feel free to phone a friend if you need to.
Yes, Mayor, I do believe that Kelsey Larson, our traffic engineer, will be better suited to answer that question than I will.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah, I'm Kelsey Larson, traffic engineer on this project. So your first question was pertaining to safety of roundabouts. I would say it definitely depends on how many lanes there are. We are looking at a single lane roundabout up at the north, that County Road E. That is a location that we do see issues today with the current signalized intersection. Compared to other signalized intersections statewide, it is operating outside that normal range. So we anticipate a roundabout to improve safety at that location.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, council, any questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mayor. So what was the feedback from the public in your engagement sessions around roundabouts versus stoplights and stoplight controls?
Mayor, council member, thank you for the question. So as you can imagine, when you mention the word roundabout, there's essentially two ends of the spectrum, right? There's people that are super gung-ho. We've had people that share personal stories of traveling in Europe and seeing roundabouts before they were even here at our events. And then we also say, you know, absolutely not in my neighborhood on this corridor. I would say for the County Road E at the northern portion of the corridor, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. I would say even amongst the project management team, we hadn't thought of that initially as a potential solution. And when people saw that concept to come together, both the agency staff and community were like, wow, yeah, that really could be a solution there. I could see how that could help with some of the issues we're seeing today. I would say at the South Century College access, it's more balanced feedback. So we're seeing different positives that could come from a traffic signal, the same as different positives or negatives on both traffic signal or roundabout at South Century College. And I would say that that's reflected actually in our agency conversations as well, is that there's good reasons for both options.
Okay. So when your colleague just spoke about the E and Century intersection, the north potential roundabout that we were just discussing, she said it was operating outside of norms. Does that mean it's more dangerous than other locations? I'm not sure how to interpret the professional language you used.
Yeah, so we look at, MnDOT has, I guess, statewide averages of what you can expect for the number of crashes to be at an intersection, and this has more crashes than normal. So, yeah, more dangerous, I guess, is what we're seeing, a more higher likelihood of crashes at this location than we would expect.
And the idea is that the roundabout would be a safer option, especially if one lane in the roundabouts. At that intersection, we also have a number of egresses getting in and out of Speedway, getting in and out of other places. It's a modestly busy intersection, and a couple of those are relatively close to the intersection. What's the thinking on how we prevent backing up folks coming around the intersection, wanting to get off at one or more of those locations? What's the thinking there?
Yeah, so with a roundabout, we're able to really slow traffic. Really, you have to slow down coming into the approach. And I would say that it works out pretty well. You can see that some of the accesses closest to the roundabout would be restricted to turning right only, so they could only turn right in to the business and right out. But really with the signal, you're going to have actually typically more queuing with people stopped, waiting for the light. Really, this location works well for a roundabout because the volumes are pretty well balanced on each of the roadways, kind of allowing for equal queuing and ease of making the movements at the roundabout.
Okay, thank you. So if I could go back to Ms. Karkowski. So my understanding of your description is that if you're traveling north from 694, under at least some of the concerned 4-lane for the first portion of that, certainly through Long Lake Road and County Road D, that intersection, maintaining that through the residential stretch that follows that, and then moving, keeping about the same capacity and roadway structure as you get in the vicinity of the college and continuing north. Did I understand your comments correctly?
Mayor, council member, I apologize. We don't have a good graphic that kind of puts it all together. It's really difficult to get 1 mile onto one slide for you tonight. But yes, so starting, if we're coming north from from 694, excuse me, it would maintain the 4-lane south of County Road D and Long Lake Road. And then today, there's essentially 2 northbound lanes that one is the straight northbound lane through the residential and one is essentially a longer right turn lane into Century College that at peak times would back up with students or faculty turning. And so right now, again, north is to the right. So we're presenting 2 different alternatives. So either maintaining that 4-lane section, which obviously has property impacts associated to widening the road, or a slightly narrower section with a 3-lane undivided, so essentially 1 lane in either direction, and then turning traffic from both southbound and northbound in that middle lane.
And then moving, as you go farther north, it goes down to pretty much 2 lanes with dividers up to the intersection?
So then we would hit either the roundabout or the new traffic signal, and then north of the South Century College, it would maintain a similar section. Essentially for the rest of the corridor, we're seeing the capacity there is about the same in the future condition as it is in the existing condition. It's what we're hearing and what we've learned from our data collection efforts is 90% of faculty, staff, and students at Century College are heading south or are coming from 694. The majority are not going north, and so we don't see, with the growth that they're anticipating, we do not see along with the community growth, need to, significantly expand the roadway at this portion.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Council, any other questions or feedback? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned one of the slides on transit issues. Do we know, does anybody know, I know you're a Met Council person here, but how is the college being served through by transit right now?
Mayor, Mr. Council Member, currently the local 219 bus route is all along this portion of Century Avenue north of 694. And in our meetings with Metro Transit, they have shared that that's a really popular route from a ridership perspective. They don't anticipate that route changing at all in the near to longer term future. And so we're working directly with them on making sure that with our design progression that we're accounting for where their current stops are, but then also what they'd like to see in that, future more optimal condition as well.
And the 219 you said, so is that run down to Maplewood Mall and into St. Paul, or where does that feed from?
Unfortunately, I do not know
I can look that
where
up.
it comes from. I apologize. We can follow up with that.
Mayor, members of the council, I can answer that question for you. The 219, as in its current design, its current route, runs from basically the 3M campus along 94 in Maplewood up Century Avenue to County Road E, back west on County Road E to McKnight Road, down then south of McKnight Road in a little bit of a circuitous route till it goes over to the Maplewood Mall Transit Center.
So it sort of ends at Maplewood,
Yeah.
I guess. Interesting. Okay, thanks.
And that is the only active transit line in White Bear Lake right now.
Council, any other questions or feedback?
Just to cancel your vote out, I hate roundabouts.
As I've mentioned, Mayor, there's generally far ends of the spectrum on the topic.
Are we voting on roundabouts? I'm pro roundabout.
I've got some time to twist your arm a little bit. I'll get you. All right. So we look forward to a continued conversation on this. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right. Item 6A, 2024 Pavement Rehabilitation Project Assessment Roll. Mr. Coffey.
Members of the council, so tonight is our last major milestone of our 2024 reconstruction project. So This last step is our assessment hearing. So as you know, we fund our reconstruction projects with a combination of assessments, which is the benefit to abutting properties, and then we also pay with different city funding sources. So this is a required hearing by statute 429 before council can consider the assessment roll. Tonight you will have a hearing, which is required by that statute. Official notice was sent to all benefiting property owners, as well as being noticed in the local paper as required by the statute. As far as public process goes throughout the project, we typically started out, and this year we started it out last November, with a neighborhood meeting where we gathered input from the residents. We moved to a public hearing after going through a design process in March of 2024. And then our last major public involvement is our assessment hearing tonight, where council will consider the assessments, and residents will have an opportunity to speak for or against them. So just as a reminder, for our pavement rehab project, we had two areas. We had our first area was a neighborhood, generally a residential neighborhood north of Birch Lake Avenue, west of Bald Eagle Avenue, just west of City Hall here. The blue shows full pavement rehabilitation. That's where we go and generally leave the curb in place, but do repairs, sidewalk repairs, things like that, and completely replace the pavement. A lot of the pavements, as I've mentioned in the past, were put in at a time where they were quite thin and did not last the time that we had hoped. And so we took all that pavement out, reshaped the gravel, and redid it. The areas shown in red were areas that never had curb and gutter. They weren't built to that urban section that we've trying to get all our roadways in town to. So those were full reconstruction where we added curb and gutter, as well as full pavement replacement, storm sewers needed, and other utility repairs. So that, and then the other area, and we kind of forget about this area because it was kind of in and out and in a very short period of time, is Sports Center Drive south of County Road 96. Just a couple of private properties, and then it led into the city sports center. So that was the second area, and that was a full pavement replacement. The curb was generally in good shape, and just some minor repairs there. So that is the extent of the 2024 street project. So the improvements, again, like I said, spot curb repairs or new curb in the reconstruct area. Sidewalk, we replaced a very narrow sidewalk along Wood Avenue, got that up to ADA standards. I did storm sewer and other water sewer repairs. I will note that a big part of going into these areas is to look at private water and sewer services. As far as the city of White Bear Lake is concerned, the residents own their water and sewer services from the main to their homes. So that connection at the main all the way into their basements is theirs. So we try to do what we can to help accommodate repairs, things like that. We do televising of our sewer beforehand, try to note any concerns. In this case, from a sewer standpoint, there was a couple of areas that they had combined sewers where we notified the residents that we would, once we were able to get in there and actually dig it up, that we would, according to state plumbing code, that we needed to separate those. We also gave an optional project that residents can elect to have their sewer wires replaced, so that connection to the main to alleviate any future backups. And those are typically based on the televising that we do of those lines. The other thing that I'll note is according to the EPA's lead and copper rule, we are required to expose and determine any lead or galvanized water services. You might ask why galvanized is steel, but they have lead connections that are typically to the water main itself. So we needed to go and we exposed every water service that we didn't have any records of. And in this case, we had two that we had found that had lead or galvanized, work with those property owners to get those replaced. Each of those options or required service repairs did have an assessment component to it. As well as we work very closely with the private utilities to do any upgrades and things like that so that they minimize any damage to future or the new payment in the upcoming years. As far as the assessments go, the assessments for the residential properties, it's over a 15-year period. Commercial properties, a 20-year period. This year's interest rate is still fairly low at 5.42%. These assessments would be payable on the 2025 taxes. If the council elects to adopt the assessment roll tonight, the residents and property owners would have 30 days to pay before our city's finance department would certify to the county. Where's my last? I was going to make a couple of notes here. So before we go into the public hearing, just want to note that residents do have an opportunity to appeal their assessments through a written statement this evening. If they so elect to, or if council adopts the assessment roll and they want to continue that process, they would have 30 days to file at district court to continue that appeal on their assessments. I will also note that there are opportunities for residents who qualify for certain deferrals, senior disability or military service, according to statute, that they can contact the engineering department, and we also included that in the correspondence when we sent out the assessment notices. So they have that option to do that. It continues to grow with interest, but they have the opportunity to defer it for up to 30 years to alleviate any current financial situation. So that is an option for property owners who wish to elect to do that. Otherwise, staff would recommend that council hold the assessment hearing and consider adoption of the assessment roll for the 2024 pavement rehabilitation project this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. At this time, I will open it up for a public hearing. And it just dawned on me that after 2 years and 9 months of being mayor and butchering names that have signed up, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to say the street address, which is easier to pronounce. So in order of who signed up, the residents of 1966 3rd Street, please come up and state your name and reiterate your address for the record, and you shall be heard.
I don't blame you for not trying to pronounce my name. It's Greg Fashingbauer, and actually I'm not the resident there, but I own that home. But first of all, I'll try to be quick up here. I had a few questions. That's not me. But first of all, thank all of you for being here. I know this isn't part of your regular schedule. I mean, especially the mayor and Paul. I know I've gotten a lot of communication from you, and I appreciate that. A lot of times you get stuff that isn't even signed, but you've kept us up to date, and I appreciate all the work of all of you, because this isn't your normal schedule, so thanks for being here. So, and the people that showed up, thank you too, because it shows some interest and participation. But I made a few notes. Let's see if I can read them. I didn't attend the first meeting. I think you said it was back in March. I guess it was one in the fall, you said, but I didn't attend that. Now I've got allergies, but I had a fever and stuff, so I didn't want to come up here where everybody else is going to be. So I would have preferred to attend that. And I'm not here to complain or judge or file anything, but I just want to get a few things clarified. Read my notes real quick. Okay, and I'm talking, this is a home that I own, 96 3rd Street. It's between Bald Eagle and Campbell. And bought it probably in 1976, I'm guessing. And my wife and I lived there for about 20 years, and then we separated. And unfortunately for her, she got breast cancer at 35, and so I bought her out of the house, but I lived there for many years, and I paid the taxes up once in a while. She gave me a little, so it wasn't a rental for me. It was actually, so it has deteriorated. So I apologize to the people here. We're going to get it fixed up, and the people on the street. It's this. I don't know how these woodpeckers peck holes in that hard siding, but I've got some cement siding coming. If they get through that, I'm going to abandon it, they can have it. But, so we'll get it roofed and get it fixed up before shortly. I've had a couple deaths in the family. I'm dealing with probate, so it's in the hot weather. And I do Market Fest, I do a charity thing there, so it's taken up a lot of time. But as far as the questions concerning this project, yeah, I guess I think probably, I was going to ask why that street was targeted, but I think probably it goes back to maybe, I'm guessing 1985. Redid that street there, and I remember getting the assessment, and they said, and this is just a point, I'm not complaining, we can't go back and do anything, but I remember they said, we're going to get cement, they were assessed for cement curving, not tar curving, and anyway, the assessment. But then when they were running maybe over budget or behind, and I went out there and talked to the fellow, and because they're putting down the tar, and I said, I thought we were assessed for cement, and they said, it's the same thing. I thought, well, we know it isn't, because as soon as the sun came out and people drove on it, it flattened out. But so it's not a big deal. But I mean, it's just, I'm glad that you guys got the cement at this time, and I didn't have to go out and talk to somebody about the tar. So, because it's got to be a tough job to keep this thing. I mean, I think originally mine was assessed for back in March when it came out, 5,500. Now it's going to be close to 7,000. So I don't know how you keep track of all this stuff and keep it in the budget. It's just got to be a terrific challenge for you. So I appreciate it. But one question I do have regarding that, is that based on, because I have a double out there, is that based on per footage, so much per footage? I'm not talking about the side streets, because they're computed differently, but the ones that are running between Campbell and, is that so much a foot? Is that how it is?
Sure, Mr. Crappie.
Mayor, members of the council, so the city's assessment policy, so there were, we always do as we get into our final assessment roll, we work with an independent appraiser who reviews our assessment rolls, make sure that we're applying the city's assessment policy fairly adequately and in accordance with that assessment policy. There were a few, as we always see, we're dealing with, as you mentioned, we deal with hundreds of numbers on these spreadsheets, and we always double check everything, and there's a few that had gotten entered in at a straight 100 feet, and the assessment policy as it is written is by front footage, so we adjusted those to reflect the actual front footage of those properties.
Yeah, I think I have two lots. A long time ago I figured it out. I think they're like 63 feet a lot, a lot if I remember, but that's a long time. I don't, my mind, that's a long time ago that I looked at that. But so, in other words, if someone had a 63-foot lot and I have double that, they would pay half as much. It's not. How about, is it based on? Yep. Now, like I say, it hasn't been homesteaded, so is that going to affect it? I mean, it's not a rental. They sent me a thing saying that your rental. It wasn't a rental. I paid all the tax insurance. You lived there for free, and that doesn't matter. That's just, it wasn't never rented. It never was an income property for me. Otherwise, I'd been fixing it up as it went along. But.
Sure. Mr. Crappie, does the homestead affect that?
So, Mayor, members of the council, the assessments look at the property itself. It does not look at whether it's homesteaded or not.
Okay. That's, I just want, and I would have looked this stuff up online, but I had a MacBook, and that's the only computer I had. And I was filling the tub with water, and guess what? I dropped it in there. So it didn't work too well after that. Don't drop them in there. But I've got another one ordered, and anyway. Okay, I appreciate that, because that helps me clarify that. And this is for other people mainly. I just didn't understand. It said interest is charged, but if it goes into the first day of the next year, then it's no matter when you paid it off, you'd be charged interest for that whole year. Did I understand that right? You know what I mean? It said,
sure.
I'm going to pay it off. I plan on paying it off in 30 days. But I mean, for those people, I know I've talked to other people, and I just want to be able to help them out and say, hey, yeah, if you don't pay it off, if you pay it off the 2nd of January, you got to pay interest for that whole year.
Sure, yeah, I think our city attorney can enlighten us a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a statutory provision that provides that interest will accrue. So for the first 30 days after adoption, you can pay it interest-free, as I think City Engineer Cuppy has said. But then once day 31 comes, you're going to be paying interest through December 31st of this year, but that's only until November 15th of this year.
Yeah, right.
After that, it will, again, pursuant to statute, any payments after that will have an interest accrued through December 31st of the following year. So it's quite a look ahead, but that's what the legislature decided to do with that.
Yeah, that's what I thought I read. I thought I understand that. It seems like any other loan you take off, most of them you pay it off. But here you're going to get, so I'll let those people know that talk to me that, hey, yeah, you want to be aware of that, because it's kind of a penalty in a sense, and I'm not faulting anybody here for it. It's just like you say, it's the way that it's written up. But okay, so thank you for the clarification. I'll try to hurry here. Yeah, I think that's all I have. this doesn't affect, this is a state. I don't know, this house went from being valued at 265,000, now it's 316, they're estimating. I don't know what, maybe I shouldn't patch the holes, but, okay, and those are, I guess, basically the things I wanted to clarify. But again, I want to thank all of you because it's got to be a daunting task. I know you appreciate all the information you sent out, and like I say, had I had not given my computer a bath, I would have looked it up online and probably saved from coming in here. But I do appreciate you and the mayor and everyone else, all the work you do. It's got to be a daunting task, and you've been very informative, and that says a lot about you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fashionbauer. All right, my neighbors, now residents at 1961 3rd Street, would you like to speak to this?
Can I speak right here?
Why don't you step up to the mic and state your name and address, just so we have it for the record.
Hello, neighbor.
Hi there.
My question, I'm Terry Roderick, this is my husband Jerry. We have an assessment right now at about 9,000, and because we're on the corner, so we have that long assessment, if that's correct. Just wonder about the interest rates. If we connect this to our taxes, will we still be able to hold the same interest rate over the years?
I believe the answer is yes, but I'll defer to the more learned ones, whether it's Mr. Copy or Ms. Kinsfater, but I believe it is.
Mayor, members of the council, as far as the interest rate goes, yes, that is. The interest rate that is adopted is maintained over the life of the assessment.
Okay.
It's fixed.
Yep, it's a fixed assessment.
Is that, the way I was reading this, that 5 or 5.42, whatever it is, interest rate, is that once a year or is that every month?
I believe it's an annualized interest rate. So it's just like a mortgage or a car loan. It's not anything, it's the same amortization schedule as any other kind of financing. So there's no mystery in terms of assessment financing from anything else, whether it's a mortgage or a car loan.
Okay.
And who do I get a hold of? I mean, if I want to make extra payments to get it paid off, say, in a year instead of over the 15, who do I get a hold of to
Yeah, I think
Make
Ms.
those extra
Kinsvater can
payments.
shed some light on kind of the ins and outs of that. Good question.
Mayor and members of the council, once we turn the special assessment over to Ramsey County, then you would work with Ramsey County to pay that off. And they track that. So we collect the payments up until November 15th, up until November, then we turn over the assessment. Any payments after that point would be to Ramsey County.
Okay, and we'll get that, when we get the information about that, we get information about who to contact.
Exactly.
Right, okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The residents, or at least property owners of 4711 Campbell Avenue. Okay, all right. That's the last name on my list. That doesn't mean you can't speak. Would anyone else like to speak to this issue before I close the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Council, we have a resolution before us adopting the assessment. What would we like to do?
I'll move approval.
Great. I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The resolution is passed. Thank you all for coming. All right, item 7, nothing scheduled. Item 8A, the property acquisition. Mr. Lindahl, whenever you're ready.
Mayor, members of the council, the item before you tonight is consideration of a resolution to approve a purchase agreement for the property that's located at the southeast corner of Bel Air Avenue and Spruce Lane, just to the north of the County Road E and Bel Air intersection. It is currently owned by Hammer Northeast Residents, who owns the larger property, as you can see on the property in red is the one the city is considered purchasing, and Hammer owns the larger property in the middle of this block at 2539 County Road E. The property was offered to the city by Hammer because they no longer have need for this portion of their parking lot. And staff has done an analysis of the zoning requirements for parking based on their Hammer's current use of the property, and the parking that they have in this section is also not required under the zoning code standards. The city is interested in this property because it's adjacent to the property that the city already owns at the northeastern corner of Bel Air and County Road E at 2511, just south of the property in question. The purchase is consistent with a number of the city's plans, including the comprehensive plan, the most recently adopted strategic plan, and the County Road E Corridor Action Plan worked on last year. Hammer has agreed to the purchase price and conditions that are detailed in the purchase agreement that was presented to you tonight. Staff recommends using funds from the city's Economic Development Fund to purchase this property. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindahl. Before we get to questions, I'm just going to offer my comments and first compliments to staff who worked diligently to negotiate what I think was a fair price on this. I know a lot of back and forth and hard work went into it. I'll also compliment the council who, for those that are in the audience or listening at home, don't have the benefit of lots and lots of discussion at work sessions. We discussed this at length, and the reason I ultimately support it, and I think most of the council does as well, is this is going to make what already is a piece of land that the city owns by acquiring this lot a much more attractive option for future land use and development. I wouldn't say our current lot is awkward, but it's at a difficult size that the addition of this additional land will make it much more viable, whether it's land or commercial or whatever. I also think we're getting it for a fair price, and it makes sense. And to the taxpayers who ultimately are footing the bill for this isn't like we're just spending $149,000 and it's out the window. I think we'll more than recoup that in whatever. We're not going to hold on to it and be land barons forever. This is part of what I hope will be a relatively short turnaround and a better and higher use for that piece of land than it currently sits as a parking lot and an open lot. So I fully support this. I would urge the council to adopt it and the purchase agreement. And with that, council, do we have any questions or comments or a motion to approve the purchase agreement?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The property acquisition is approved. Thank you. All right, item 8B, the 2025 preliminary budget and tax levy. Ms. Crawford, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We will go over tonight the 2025 budget schedule, fund balance analysis, strategic plan alignment, the preliminary budget, the preliminary tax levy, and then just some estimated tax levy impacts. To start, excuse me, to start out the 2025 budget schedule, we are at September 10th tonight, where you will consider the preliminary tax levy and establish the truth in taxation hearing date, which we are proposing as December 10th. So City Council met in 2 work sessions in June and in August to review the preliminary budget, and then that work will continue later this fall with our other funds. But tonight's mostly to discuss the general fund, which is our tax levy supported fund. So when we create the budget each year, there's a process that that requires us to analyze 2 fund balance related percentages, and the budget that I'm going to present tonight meets those fund balance analysis. So the state auditor recommends we keep a minimum of 5 months of operating costs or 42% on hand accessible to cover unanticipated costs. We will be at 41.8 to 9, so just slightly below round up, and it's at 42. and then to track the fund balance to ensure funds are available to pay claims in the first half of each year. And that the anticipated fund balance for that will be 59.86%. These numbers are just slightly higher than what was presented to you at the work session because we did a budget adjustment since last August, or excuse me, since a month ago. The budget presented tonight does align with the strategic plan recently adopted in February, I believe, of this year. These are the core strategies, just to remind the City Council and to share with the public. These are the core strategies of our strategic plan. I'm not going to read all of them, and I know it's a lot. That's kind of my point, right? Is that the budget, again, that we have brought forward tonight meets the following goals and objectives identified in the city's strategic plan. So again, you are seeing something that does align with the trajectory of where council has said we should go. So notable revenue changes in the proposed or preliminary 2025 budget include ARPA aid and public safety local government aid that was used to support operations previously and up until 2024 has concluded at the end of this year. So we don't have that anymore to rely on like every other community. We'll be going through that same thing. LGA, or again, local government aid funds, have been retained in the general fund to reduce the proposed tax levy increase. Half of about $500,000 DNR grant for shade tree funding to remove emerald ash borer and tree replacement has been included in the budget as a revenue. You'll see that also is offset as an expenditure on the next slide too. Same with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Pathways to Policing grant has been included as a revenue and expenditure. So, of course, those two net each other out, but there are notable changes, so we did want to call those out. Our school resource officer reimbursement from White Bear Lake area schools has been increased because we have added a third SRO for this year at their request, and you have already authorized that, and they're actually in school already. Interest revenues, that's a snapshot, of the average cash balance as of June 30th. That's the process that we follow every single year. And then there's a reduction of the pavement management fund transfer of support for engineering operations previously included in the pavement management fund at $100,000. 2025 is the final transfer, and that will be concluded. I know that was important to council that we've been working on over the last several years, so that's excited that we are nearing end. When we look at notable expenditure changes, salary adjustments per the adopted pay plan, including benefit factors, are notable changes, as well as a 3% cost of living adjustment. We do currently have 3 labor agreements currently open for negotiation right now. The increase in costs for employee health insurance benefits, and we did get to bring that down a little bit from what the City Council saw in the work session. Staff training is a notable expenditure change that continues, to increase. I won't say significantly, but appropriately for mostly public safety and crisis communications, notably for next year. Routine operating tech costs related to software systems or servers and IT support. We have additional personnel added that I'll go to in a different slide. And then emerald ash borer tree replacements funded through that DNR grant. And then again, that Pathways to Policing grant from Department of Public Safety. So the 2025 preliminary tax levy reflects a 14.85% or $1.7 million increase over the 2024 levy. We have broken out on the screen there how that breaks down to make up that levy increase. So it's just over 3% for operating expenditures that were previously supported by the Public Safety LGA. Which includes 1 firefighter, paramedic. That position has been filled And now we need to account for that salary in the 25 budget. 7.78% of the increase is for general operations, including personnel and benefits. 1.33% is for debt service related to the 2024 street reconstruction project that we just talked about. And then 2.73% is for the following new positions. 2 of the positions have already been filled. Again, 1 school resource officer, and then a half a year of the building maintenance technician position. That position was new in 2024. We hired that position, we were authorized to hire in July 1, 24. Therefore, we need to add another half year to make that a full year in 2025. Then this budget also includes the addition of 1 additional firefighter paramedic and 1 communications specialist position. That you'll see the drastic difference in communications specialists, that the cost of that. That is because several other funds will assist payment in sharing the cost of that employee, given the benefit that employee will bring to every other department. So that is a portion of that. The $64,400 is what the general fund would take care of. And truthfully, it is covered by our PEG fees and franchise fees, but no matter how you dice it, it is an increase to the levy. When we look at estimated property tax levy impacts, this is a snapshot of a document that is, or an attachment that's in your packet. So just highlighting that attachment, the taxable market value grew by 5.39%. The net tax capacity grew by 2.62%. As I said, the preliminary tax levy is potentially going to be growing by 14.85%. But if the value of a property did not change, a property would feel an 11% increase to city. It wouldn't feel like 14, it would feel like 11. I'm happy to go into further detail if anyone has questions about that. The city tax capacity rate will be 30.38% at this levy. So when we look at, a dollar, right, and this is $1 in a pie chart form, several entities do tax properties. So for every property tax dollar paid, approximately 21 cents, is collected by the city. The remainder then is divided amongst Ramsey and Washington counties, the school district, and other governmental agencies like Met Council and the Mosquito District and watershed districts. So for every dollar that you pay in property taxes, 21 cents of that goes to the city. In 2024, the median home value in White Bear Lake is $334,200. And so for 2025, that property would pay $965 in city, for the entire year in city taxes. Again, homes are valued, the valuation of a home is determined by the county auditor. It's not determined by the city. Some people don't quite understand that, but the city doesn't assign values to properties. But the median home value did increase over the past year, but for $965 next year, this property will continue to receive an excellent quality of life in White Bear Lake with 24/7 police access, response, 24/7 fire, street lighting, street plowing, parks, access to the city council, etc. And this pie chart just shows how our budget is divided up. So you can see a significant portion of the city's budget goes to public safety services. That's nothing new, but both fire and police, that dollar amount has increased from From the previous year, general government actually did go down from 2024, and then everything else saw a slight increase. And again, happy to provide, some comparables, but for the sake of time tonight, I didn't bring 24 against 25. So there, are additional details in the city council packet with the budget, the general fund summaries for revenues and expenditures, as well as tax comparison information from prior years on properties that the city council has traditionally tracked. But staff does recommend the city council adopt the attached resolution approving the preliminary tax levy. The tax levy must be set, the preliminary levy must be set no later than September 24th. That is the next city council meeting. You can adopt it tonight if you wish, which is what we traditionally have done. The city council will hold the truth and taxation hearing and adopt a final tax levy at the December 10 city council meeting. And just a reminder to the city council and to the public, for anyone who doesn't know, the preliminary levy, the city council may reduce the tax levy in December, but they may not set it, they may not increase it once a preliminary levy is set. So it is not uncommon for, city councils to adopt a levy and for it to decrease in December, but it may not increase per state statute. So with that, I will stand for any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. I just want to reiterate again, because it's worth noting that, again, this is a preliminary budget, and by creature of state law, we have to set the ceiling. And the goal would be, I think members of the council would join me on this, over the next 3 months, we're going to continue to have discussions and sharpen our pencils as much as we can and fine-tune this to a budget that we can ultimately consider in December. But again, this sets the ceiling of what the ceiling of what the tax levy could be. So with that, council, do we have questions for Ms. Crawford or comments on the preliminary budget? If not, I would
Hold on, give me a second. Sure, go ahead, please.
Councilmember Hughes.
Mr. Mayor, just so I'm understanding, are we voting on the tax levy or are we voting on the budget cap? Like, am I voting on 14.85 or 17 point, like, what is it exactly that I'm voting on, that we're agreeing to? The preliminary levy is not actually the budget. It is the percent levy. It's the levy, right?
Ms. Crawford.
Mayor, Councilmember Hughes, so you are setting the preliminary tax levy, which is a portion of the revenue that comes into the general fund budget. The final budget, the budget will be adopted in December. So you're not adopting a budget, but we are required to set our preliminary levy either tonight or by September 24.
So what I'm saying tonight is I agree to this amount of money that I would ask for Ramsey County to provide for us through their taxing process.
This is the amount that we would certify to property taxes through Ramsey and Washington counties, yes.
So this is not actually budget like line item, like I agree to spend XYZ on a truck and ABC on a building?
Not at this point.
Okay.
We can't increase. This is as the mayor said, this ceiling. So it's a piece of the budget.
And in December, when we talk about the budget, are we then like line iteming, like it is only X amount for the Lake Conservation District and Y amount for, I'm just looking on the thing, on these specific things, or is money fungible within those amounts and it's still just, I'm agreeing to the levy amount?
There are a few different resolutions. One is setting that in December. One is adopting the budget. Another is certifying the tax levy. So you're doing both in that December meeting.
Okay.
Carrie, Ms. Kinzenbauer, do you want to elaborate at all? Okay.
Oh, okay. So here's kind of why I was asking, because we go through this every year and I get really confused, and then you have these great presentations and I'm like, of course this makes sense. And yet I sit here and I'm agreeing to a 14% tax increase again. And last year's was a 12?
20.
20. And the year before that was?
23.2.
23.2. And part of this is the public service building, which we knew. But I'm kind of tired of it. And so what I guess I'm wondering, you know, what am I allowed to do? What are we allowed to do? Can I just say, I don't want it to be 14%, I want it to be 11? Is that something that has to be written down? How do I bring that up as like as an idea for other people to agree or disagree with?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. As a matter of process, we have 2 weeks we have to approve whatever the ceiling will be. So if we don't approve it, then that's a problem for us. If it's your desire to bring it down significantly, I think there will be multiple other opportunities to do that, because we're not approving the budget or the tax levy at this point. We're approving the preliminary, which means it has no weight of law until we actually finalize it. And I think through work sessions and then in December, we'll ultimately have to approve something. But I mean, strictly speaking, if you don't even want to move forward, if you want a lower ceiling, then now's the time to do it.
And would that be like an amendment, or, I mean, what is that? This is where I got all wrong with the last time I opened my mouth.
Yeah,
Well,
Councilmember
maybe I
Walsh.
can help. I mean, we're looking at a resolution tonight. So if you look at the resolution, it is lined out. Our general fund number is 11.3. That's probably the number you would amend, and just giving you advice. I mean, the other ones are more specific and much smaller and probably more difficult to
You
change.
can't amend those ones. You
Pardon me?
can't amend your
Couldn't
debt
even amend those,
service.
so yeah. So the general fund number, you can see that they all add up to 13.7, then we get this fiscal disparity money back, which maybe Ms. Crawford could explain fiscal disparities to us. No, I'm just kidding, we won't do that tonight. Because so the final number, net levy 12.4, which is really the number we're proving tonight, the 12.4. So you'd really have to move to amend the resolution on that 11.353 number to do that, and as part of that discussion.
Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, Councilmember Hughes, I would ask you to identify specifically what you're directing staff to cut in order to get that.
Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is an interesting conversation, completely legitimate. It's why we're here. So in one sense, the simpler way to think about it, I think, is we're dealing with the revenue side of our budget here. We're not, this resolution says we think our financial needs are such that we require X dollars to be collected from property owners in our city, and that's the revenue side of our conversation. Once we set this number, that will be used for the truth in taxation hearings, which give people an estimate of what they can be expected to be paying if there are no changes. And so that gives them, that arms them with the opportunity to engage with us and other taxing jurisdictions. So to some extent, the impact of a decision to reduce the maximum levy only says we're not going to take more money from other places. But the other decisions that then become necessary are, so because this is a revenue action, the expenditure action is the one that we take up in December when we approve the budget. And as we've gone through all numerous work study sessions and so forth, we've been going along with the idea that the primary changes are the one that the city manager identified. Those are the things that we're adding, and there's a couple of subtractions of revenues, but it's like we could deficit spend. We could maintain our level of expenditures and borrow through a number of options. Or we can have that conversation about what are we going to do less of. Now, those are the budget conversations that we would have in December. And I'm going to kind of guess that we can't do one without doing the other. We can't reduce our revenues without reducing our expenditures, because I don't know that we got the, we could borrow enough money for a while, but I'm not sure that that's the prudent thing that any of us would choose to do. So it's like when city manager says, identify what we're not going to do, that's the conversation that we would need to have before December, because if we're going to levy less, this is our biggest source of general fund resource. If we're going to say we're not going to raise as much, then what are we going to not do? And I think that becomes the obligation of those who want to argue for a reduced tax impact. That's the place to say, okay, and here are my favorite gooses that I'm going to kill in order to us having this outcome. So that's kind of time frames.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, maybe for Ms. Kinsvater. And I keep getting confused by this. We've been adding 2 firefighters a year for several years, trying to build up to that level that we've kind of decided is the target to run a full-time fire department. We added 2. I got to go back maybe 2 budgets ago. 2 budgets ago, we added 2. Last budget, we added 2, and then we added 3, right? And you're seeing this is where we get so confused. We added 2 in the budget, in the last budget we proposed. And then you've got one in this budget that says it's already paid for. So wouldn't that be a third one that we added? So, okay, you're jumping at the microphone to answer. So help me understand this. We're not adding 2 this year. I see 2 on the sheet. One's already paid for. How do we pay for that? And then we're adding 1 more because we're going to stick with 2 per year. If it's already filled, it says on the sheet it's already filled. So how do we not add 3 then, if it's already filled?
Mayor, Councilmember Walsh, the person, the firefighter paramedic on the screen was previously funded by Public Safety LGA.
Right.
So we don't have that Public Safety LGA. That was a one-time revenue source.
So let me go backwards. We added 2. We used LGA to pay for one of the 2.
So now, yes. So now we have to add that position back in. So you're paying for 2 next year, receiving 1 new.
So we're falling behind that schedule then. We're only adding 1 this year.
Yes, the 25 budget is proposing to add 1 new.
Not 2.
Not 2.
Because
correct.
we're going to start paying for in the general fund to cover the expenses for that one that we added, one of the 2 that we added last
Correct.
year. There isn't a third one. It's 2 and now 1.
Correct.
Not, okay, that's, all
If
right.
you would like to add 2, you need to add 124,000 to the tax levy, which will increase that above 15%.
Okay, I'm glad, this is fine. I finally understand this. I thought that was an extra. It's actually just, we're actually down 1 towards our plan. And then I always keep asking this question, well, how far away are we from finishing that kind of addition? A couple more years?
That's a great question. I think that maybe a conversation that the city council and the fire chief and I need to have together outside of this meeting.
Well, we're getting close. We have been adding, and we're getting
Yes,
close
we're
to
at
where he
18
thinks we've got
full-time.
the 2.
First of all, we have a combination department. We still have part-time firefighters. We plan to have them. So for anyone who's watching, I want to clarify that. But we have 18 full-time firefighters right now. This would be 19 after this hire. 21 was initially the discussion, I think, amongst, internally, or 24 was at that discussion. There's, again, that's probably a conversation for a work session when the fire chief can weigh on.
I'll just comment then. I don't think I would have made that decision that you guys did, which is perfectly fair, but I would have wanted to stay on track and add 2 and then absorb the third. I guess I'd call it the third, or one of the 2 last year that we used one-time funds for. I knew what I was doing. We voted to use one-time funds. I thought it was great. Use the money when it's there, save the taxpayers a dime, and then fully knowing that we're going to have to cover the full cost of that going forward, So that gets absorbed in the general fund that you bring forward. And then I still would have probably added 2. We can revisit that as we go here towards December.
But
I understand it costs more. Yeah, I know.
But you can't increase the levy after tonight.
Well, we can move money around inside that.
Sure.
So we can change priorities for sure. I wouldn't advocate to increase the number tonight, but there may be some moving around we can do. But I'm just philosophically saying, now that I understand what you did, I'm not sure I would have done that. I think I want to stay on schedule sort of to get fully staffed in that fire department, kind of the way we planned it. But yeah, you're right. If we decide tonight, then I got to find $124,000 somewhere else. Let me ask about what I consider a surplus at the end of the year. We've had this discussion before too. You know, we've done a good job. You've done a good job. I'll say that the staff has done a good job, or not. I mean, it's one way or the other. There's been money left over at the end of the last few budgets. I mean, significant money. The one year, I think $900,000 once. I'm trying to jump around in minutes here, but I think another $600,000 that we concluded, I think, in the 2024 budget as kind of carry forward. I think of it as carry forward to be used in the budget. You use this language. We have a deficit spending kind of a situation because we committed to spend X amount of money. But we really don't have that revenue coming in because we're using the carry forward. I think of it in my head a little differently. I think that's not deficit spending because that's a negative thing. We certainly have the money. We're not committing to anything we can't afford. So I just think one of the things that we can maybe sharpen the pencil on without being too specific on what to cut. We've been very cautious. We've been very conservative on behalf of the city, on behalf of the city's bank accounts. And that's a laudable thing. But in the process, we're getting the maximum amount from the taxpayers, and so they're not able to do that like we've been able to do that. So that might be one thing we could look at. And maybe just the question would be, what's proposed? Is it proposed to get right down to the number, all the way down to 0, and then throughout the year, just things happen? We don't hire a few people, we go some salary savings, and then interest income goes up. We don't have to snowplow as much, and then we end up with a few $100,000 in the bottom line. I guess philosophically, I'll just do my philosophy. I think one area we could look at is to eyes wide open, cut it closer. I know in your position, you're saying, well, we don't want to end up struggling in the last part of the last 6 months of the year. But if we give you permission to cut it closer, that might be a way we could not raise the levy as much, I guess is what I'm saying. So, Lordy, what's the plan today as we look ahead to the budget for 2025? And maybe what's the projection? Do we have any idea what we're going to end up at 2024? We're sitting here in September. It's a little early, but.
Mm-hmm. So the projection this is the fund balance analysis that we do when we prepare the budget each year. And Ms. Kinsvater, please jump in at any point. But the state auditor recommends a minimum of 4 months of operating costs. So that's 42%, that our fund balance be at 42% for the next year. At the end of December 31, 24, this year, we will be at 41.89%. So meaning, which is still within council's 35 to 50% policy. The second fund balance analysis is to track the fund balance to ensure funds are available to pay claims in the first half of the year. So we're about 59% on that analysis. We have been higher in those 2 percentages in previous years, which has allowed us to use some of the cash on hand, the carry forward, or the fund balance. I am not recommending that we use any of that next year because we have been relying on that in the last couple of years. And these percentages don't project us to be at a point where I would recommend the council dip into that money again.
Just one question, though. The 41.89% is a percent of a larger number. Mm-hmm. If the number's smaller, then the 41% would be a different dollar amount. So it's kind of like the dog chasing the car a little bit. As the budget grows, that 41% has to grow. But if the budget were smaller, it'd be easier to hit it. So that's fine. That's not really my question. My question is more just what do we plan? Money coming in, money going out. What do we plan to have on the bottom line? Not the savings account, not the fund balance. but for the 2025 budget,
yeah.
how do you plan? Are we down to the number? We have
Yeah.
what, $2
So-
left in the account at the end of the year if everything goes right? Is that what we're planning?
We always try to have a balanced budget, which means
Right down to the number.
right. So in 2025, the revenues over expenditures is $89.
$89. Okay, that's where I thought I saw that. Okay. But the last few years, it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Under, meaning then we've needed to use our fund balance to make that.
No, you're looking at it differently than
No,
I am.
well-
The last few years, we have ended the year
Oh.
with an excess.
Yes.
We
We have not
overshot our
planned
target.
to do
Yeah.
that.
And then we use that money going forward. So you and I are never going to think the same on that.
I know.
I'm just
Budget to actual.
yeah. And I got, I'm a musician, so yeah, your way is probably better. But okay, I think that's, well, I think I had one. Well, go ahead. If there's others, I had one more question I thought, but I'll think of it. Well, you raised your hand, didn't you, or not?
Well, it's a useful conversation, but I'm happy to let you finish your questions.
Well, I don't think I have any other question. The only other philosophical thing, just to play off of Councilmember Hughes's question, and Councilmember Edberg responded and said, or sort of the city manager, if you want to say we're going to take in less money, then you have to identify where we're going to cut. Yes, that's a good way to do it. There are other entities, government entities that we could also propose sort of an across-the-board cut and let the staff figure that out. And there are arguments to do both ways. I mean, I could certainly identify, don't hire that firefighter, don't do the comms director, or the comms specialist. That's one valid way of doing it. But the other way of doing it is, you know what? We're going to let you guys figure it out. The levy's too big. It's too big of a bite out of the taxpayers. So instead of 12.4, live with 12. Live with, 12 million. And then how you come up with the 461, you might be in a better position to make those decisions than we are in terms of micromanaging individual budget decisions. Now, I know a lot of people say across-the-board government budget cuts are irresponsible, and they hit, and we're not saying every budget gets hit a certain percentage. Sometimes that's proposed, like every department gets a certain amount of cut. Well, that might not be responsible, but cutting the number overall and letting the staff meet that number, knowing the daily in and out is a valid argument. I'm not proposing it today. I'm just saying that I'm kind of have the same angst. This number is very large. I mean, we've got, the 2022 budget was $8 million, the general fund piece levy. We went from 8 to 9.9, and then we did the building. Let's be clear. We built a very, very beautiful building that we opened last month, and jumped to 12 million, and now we're jumping 12 to 12.4. So we've really grown from 8 to 12 really fast, and we can explain it all, and it's voted for most of it. I think maybe all of it in these years, but these are big increases, and another one, 14.85%, another one, very large increase. Thank you for listening.
Councilmember Edberg, I know you want to weigh in. I want to offer some comments on that because
Go for it, Mayor.
in a lot of ways, Councilmember Walsh, I philosophically agree. I think a couple of things. One, I think the beauty of local government is that we can, in these preliminary budgeting sessions, get a little bit more down in the weeds than we do maybe at the state level and certainly at the federal level. And what I mean by that is, I'm with you, 14% and last year 20% and the year before 22%. These are huge, huge increases. But I'll say for the third budget cycle in a row, if there was a marble fountain that we're proposing, I'd be the first one to want to cut it. So that it's important to get into the weeds. And so one, I'm not sure there's a lot of fluff in the budget to begin with. And two, while these conversations are good, and I think we'll continue to have them, I look at what the action item before us tonight is not committing to anything other than the ceiling. And for my commitment, and I think many of us on the dais, to go back and really have those internal discussions. I'm not sold on the communications specialist. That's one item. Quite candidly, we've got some spade work to do on the fire department, because our expansion of the fire department is largely predicated on our contract cities, which candidly are in question right now. We're working through things like that. So those are all the discussions that we're going to continue to have before we actually vote on whether it's 14% or 12% or 8% in December. But for tonight, we can set the ceiling. What I don't like is, well, philosophically, as a governing tool, you can say, you know what, let's just call it a 12% increase for purposes of tonight, and say to staff, go figure out a way to live within our means. The reason I'm hesitant to do that is because we have at least a fairly detailed list of items that are substantiating why the increase is 14.85. And of these things, there's not anything really, really glaring that says, well, that's low-hanging fruit. Cut it today. Let's just move it down. There are a couple things in here I think we can sharpen our pencils on. So I'm not given as much heartburn tonight over the 14.85 because I'm confident we're not going to adopt a 14.85% increase in December. Whether it's 12, whether it's 10, whether it's 13, I don't know. But I think we will sharpen our pencils because there are a couple items on there that we'll have to fine tune a little bit. So I think it's important to understand what stage of the process that we're at, and not get carried away about a symbolic cutting of the proposed levy increase tonight and then handcuffing us later on if we decide there may be some things that we need to spend money on between now and December. So those are my comments. Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to speak only to two items that Councilmember Walsh raised. I want to talk about budget surpluses that we have enjoyed. I also want to remind us of some of our cost drivers that have driven these numbers, and whether they are large increases or large increases on a historically low base is a whole nother realm of conversation. So every year we budget, you can't run a city, you can't run a complex organization and budget it down to the penny or the nickel or the dime, not even to the 10 or the 20 or the 100. It's like we have variabilities. And so we try and budget. The philosophy for the 14 years that I've been here has been that we try and use the best judgment that we can that incorporates past realities. Here's what we actually paid. We try and incorporate what is the future bringing us and what do we want to change. And we try and manage revenues to meet expenses. And on the good side, staff has done an incredible job in every one of those 14 years. So you and two predecessors have brought in almost always, and there might have been one year when we were, Carrie, you can maybe, when we didn't achieve a budget surplus. And we achieved that because they brought incredible skill during the management here. And they adjusted to things that happened. So for example, some years we've had an extraordinary number of employee absences. And I'm not saying it's folks that are on military leave or that retire, vacancies, turnover. And they have managed that by not having new people on staff to provide overlap. It's like we let that person go and then we try and bring in somebody new. I'm not sure that that's a recommended or preferred continuity of service approach, but it works. From a budget standpoint, it saves money. And staff has done an incredible job, and that's where we end up with our budget surpluses. And then every year, we get an explicit conversation about, so what are we going to do with that? Do we just roll it forward? We almost always use it to address some other high priority issue. So it's not like it was wasted. We have an explicit conversation about what's the appropriate use, and we're usually talking about 6 digits, and the first one is 1, 2, or 3. Now, there was a year where we had a revenue recognition issue, and we had a conversation about that during the audit presentation, where certain revenues were recognized on December 30th of a fiscal year. So we get a check. It has to go into that year's revenues, but it was always expected to be supporting expenditures in the subsequent year. So you have this blip that says you have this really big surplus. Well, not really. We just got paid early, and that money was already scheduled to be spent the next year. So we allocated that money to that. So this sense of trying to find an even finer, harder way of managing budget surplus does not strike me on the, to be having budget differentials of $200,000 or $300,000 on a annual general fund budget, the scale of this, I think is remarkable, and I just don't think that that's a fruitful place to go looking. So I'll set that aside. That's my view. Certainly welcome to have an alternative view. So there's a whole bunch of other drivers that have driven this. Now, I probably don't need to remind any members of the council where we rank for cities of our size. We are already down at the bottom, the top 3 or 4 at the bottom of the per capita tax, general fund tax per capita of 30 or 40 other communities like ours. Now, we can have conversations about whether we want or don't want to be like Red Wing or Winona or a bunch of others. We are unique in that we have full-time fire and ambulance. So that takes that whole rank to the comparables to a smaller number. But what has driven our expenditures are not, they're things like our expenditures have been too low, too long, and we are now trying to recognize, and we couldn't hold it that low that much longer. And so things like we were losing employees and couldn't hire police officers or firemen because we were paying, our wages were substantially below market. We did a comparable study of comparable wages. We adopted that. Yes, our labor costs have gone up, and we are now in the middle again. We are not at the high end. We are barely in the middle. We are getting applicants to come to work for us again, and we're not losing as many to other folks, other places that want to leave. We did that in response to actual observed expenditures and what's real on the ground. The second thing, we've talked numerous times about the number of calls for public safety, and particularly fire and ambulance. We're now making almost 5,000 runs a year with a staff that the old volunteer model couldn't sustain. We could not get enough folks in time to tell our residents, if you have a heart attack, if you have a major health event, we're going to have somebody to you in 3, 4, 5 minutes. And because we couldn't, we started adding professional staff, and we changed our staffing model. And you alluded to that. Whether we have 3 shifts, so we try and have a number divisible by 3. So whether that's 18, 21, or 24, okay, that's what drives it. And we've said we need to get to a rotation that allows us to have coverage throughout the evening, throughout the full day. And we have been adding a healthy amount to ensure our staffing is there. Now, those are just 2 issues. There are a bunch of others. Yes, we have the borrowing on street improvements. We have the borrowing on public facilities. All those things are core city functions. I don't know that we've paved our streets in gold. So it's like, I'm not looking to, I don't know where we're going to find that. But if somebody wants to have that conversation, it's totally legitimate. I would say the council needs to own those decisions. So whatever we cut needs to be a majority council decision. And we can't slough off our obligation as the elected decision makers to tell staff, you go take the hit, you come up with a plan. Now, if you want to direct them to come up with a plan that we then argue and down to the nitty gritty and approve, that's our job. The buck stops here. It's not theirs. So in terms of process, let's have that conversation, totally cool. But let's assume that we are the people who are going to be held accountable for the outcomes.
Councilmember Walsh.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, you brought up the staff piece, and that is the largest piece, the largest increase. Well, it's the largest piece. We're kind of a people-oriented business here. So $934,063. Personnel, benefits, expenses, 7.78% of that number is, I think that's the largest number, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
Well, first of all, just to respond to one thing that Councilmember Edberg said, I would characterize the staffing issues a little differently than you. I think we were on the cusp of starting to lose people. I have specifically asked that in one of the work sessions. Are we losing people to other cities? Well, not quite, but we're gonna any minute because there's a lot of angst. And I believe that. And so I don't know that we were there yet. We anticipated it, and we made these changes to start upping salaries, but fires or police has been an issue statewide. I mean, everybody's trying to hire policemen. It's been difficult to do that. So here's the increase for staff makes some assumptions. And this always gets weird, I think. I think it's weird. I think it's backwards, and I don't know what to do about it. You have to go to the state legislature probably to change it. But we have several employee unions that we deal with, public employee unions, and so we sort of guess, we sort of put it in the budget, and then we go negotiate. And it just seems to me, as someone on the board who has to vote to approve these contracts, is there much of a negotiation when we put it in the budget in advance, what we expect kind of to cover a new employee contract, and then we go negotiate it? It's pretty lopsided. It's sort of, which is, it's a larger discussion of why we even have public employee unions, but that's something you'd have to go back and fix nationally and locally. But this is a manifestation of it. We're negotiating public dollars publicly with a public union. So this makes some assumptions on this salary schedule that we've put ourselves on. We're not wedded to that. I mean, we sort of philosophically committed to it. We're going to make a decision. We did a salary study. We are following the recommendations of the salary study. We are including increases. We changed levels. We bumped a lot of people up, cost a lot of money. And then we kind of assume there's this COLA increase every year and a bump to catch up. There's 2 bumps every year in these budgets. We're not necessarily wedded to that. We have to vote on that every year. So that's also on the table. It's the largest number, the 934,000. And I think we are assuming a 3% increase. At least the COLA, I think, is 3%. I think that's in the memo. So I'm just, and in terms of what we're doing tonight, it's a preliminary discussion. And I'm going to vote for the motion tonight. I'm going to vote for the resolution to set it at the 12.4 on the revenue side. But it's important, I think, to start these conversations publicly and just sort of give some direction as to where we're thinking. The final decision is that December decision, where we really get into the budget and how it's spent, including what the levy will be. So, thank you.
Any other thoughts on this? Councilman Rangstrand.
I plan on voting for the tax increase now, this time, but by December 10th, I'd like to see the communication specialist taken out by December 10th.
Noted. All right. Any other thoughts on this? If not, I would entertain
I'll move the resolution.
a motion that's been made. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a approval of the preliminary 2024 tax levy. All right.
Mayor and council members, our next work session is not dedicated to the general fund. We had a big discussion about the general fund in August. We don't have another plan to discuss the general fund, so I'm asking you for direction tonight in addition to what Councilmember Engstrand recommended. As you know, this is a body that acts as one. So if there are changes that need to be made to the general fund budget and the tax levy before December, because we only have one meeting in December, that is something that I need to know now and that we need to go and prepare because we have a slew of other budgets that we need to prepare right now. And I just want to note, we also don't have an assistant finance director right now. So it is really Carrie and myself. So if I can get some direction tonight, I would greatly appreciate that.
By direction, you mean, would you like us to request a work session? What specific? Because I think, yes, we need to have another work session on this based on what I've heard at the dais. Otherwise, we're going to figure it all out in December. I'd rather do a little bit of planning and have a work session so that we have something closer to what might get approved in December. That would be my thought. But council, what would we like to do? Do we want to have a work session on this? Council?
Work session or a motion?
No, I'm just.
No, motion to cut the special right now, if you want.
No, I don't think that's necessarily before us. I think the feedback that Ms. Crawford is looking for is we have some ideas being floated around, and this isn't necessarily the forum to flesh that out. Would we like the forum to be a work session, or do we want to have this in December?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I mean, we're kind of going between, we're a legislative body. We can certainly work on this ourselves and bring amendments or bring ideas and certainly work with staff in the development of those ideas. I'm not prepared to answer. I'm not prepared tonight to tell you what I think I want to cut in the budget. We're not doing that till December. I'm not going to do that tonight. Tonight's the tax levy vote, which we just approved. I reserve the right to work on some ideas between now and December. There's also a courtesy and a working with staff and with other council members on ideas. I'm not sure we need another work session. I mean, I'm not against it if the group wants to meet again. I would say it's not tomorrow. We need a little bit of time to work on some ideas. But it might not be that complicated. It might simply be a few amendments that council members want to bring to the December meeting, which can be fleshed out in advance with some staff help, so that the numbers make sense and are tied to they're not out of nowhere. And then those amendments can be debated in public, and we can decide what to do. We've already set the preliminary levy. That's a big step. We can debate budget items, but I think from a courtesy perspective, they should be worked through staff. But I don't know that we need to have another work session to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm indifferent. I mean, it really comes down to this. If the sense is, geez, we're worlds apart, then I think we ought to have a work session. If we're not really worlds apart, then it probably is okay tweaking it through amendments in December. But there was, a lot of exchange back and forth about philosophy and wanting to get this number down. I mean, is it going to get down to 5%? No. I mean, it's going to be somewhere in there, but I don't want to be presumptive. That's up to this body to decide. I think as a matter of process, I'll put it this way. If anybody has ideas of something, wildly different, we should think about a work session, and it doesn't need to be decided tonight. That can happen through email exchanges, and Ms. Crawford can follow up individually with council members to decide if we want to do that. And I think the sense that we're getting is we're non-committal on a work session, and we'll let the budget season develop a little bit more and see if we need to circle back. I will note for the public that when we say work session, no one's trying to keep anything from the public. The work sessions are noticed and open to the public anyways, which you're welcome to come. Nobody ever does, but you're welcome to come. It just gives the council a less formalized ability to discuss the issues without so much of the Robert's Rules of Order. So it sounds like, Ms. Crawford, we don't know for sure, but we'll circle back. Councilmember Edberg.
So thank you, Mayor. I'm reflecting on the way we adopted last year's budget and final levy. And I was not a fan of topics that had never been discussed in work study being proposed. And then we had some discussion about why the proposals weren't necessarily perhaps the best. And but having ideas coming out of left field on the night that we have to adopt the budget would not be my preferred way of doing it. So I would like to suggest that we consider a work study session. I don't know that we need to schedule tonight, but my expectation of my peers is that if we're going to take on a serious process of discussing changes in our patterns of expenditure and the services that we offer to our public, that we, number one, we honor the open meeting law, and that means we can't really go and develop our conversations with other council members, at least not very easily. Number two, I'd like to have each of us have the benefit to think about what those proposed changes are and weigh them on their merits. We may or may not find agreement, but at least if we know what they are ahead of time, we can have our own consideration of what do I really think is best, and then we each get held accountable in our own ways, and that's totally fine. So having those conversations and identifying those issues that we can debate on their merits, fully prepared, is a reasonable process to have. Pulling stuff out of the air and out of our hats on the night of the offer or the night of the action is not a useful and appropriate governance approach. And so those are my expectations of my peers. You don't have to honor them. I'm just telling you what they are.
Got all that, Ms. Crawford? Okay. All right. More to come on that. Okay. Item 9, discussion, nothing scheduled. Item 10, communications from the city manager.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right. Well, I know we're running a little bit long, but I see high school students in the audience, so as it has been tradition, I need to at least comment. They're clearly back in session, so we have some American government students here. I want to welcome you. You got to see an important council meeting tonight where we discussed the budget. And I don't want to trivialize a lot of our other meetings, but a lot of things are pro forma, where there's contracts that staff bring and we say, yeah, it sounds good, but the budget is one of the most significant things that we do. And you got to see a good display of philosophical differences as we grapple with how to spend the taxpayer dollars. So I hope you got something out of this. As I've said to all the high school students, 20 years ago, actually, I got to change it now. 21 years ago, now I was in the audience. I was a junior, and we're coming up on my 20-year class reunion. So when I was a junior at White Bear Lake High School, I attended a city council meeting, and I still remember that. And I felt like I got a lot out of it, and I was glad that I did it. And I think that that certainly led the way towards me ending up here at the dais and mayor of the city of White Bear Lake. So I encourage all of you, as you grow in your education and careers, to participate in local government. You don't necessarily have to run for office, but there are lots of boards and commissions and volunteer opportunities or city staff positions. It is important work. It is the work that affects our everyday lives and is much more connected to us than oftentimes the federal government and state government is. So I want to thank you all for being here. Again, I hope you got something out of it. And we're almost done. And if you'd like, I think you need to have your papers signed, so you can come up after I hit my little hammer here, and we'll make sure you get your paperwork signed so you can get out of here. Thank you again for being here. All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
With motion second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.
Bang that gap.
Or his hammer.